Joseph Stalin, born on the 18th of December 1878 under the name Josip Zhugasvili, was the son of Ekaterine Gladz and Bessarion Zhugasvili, growing up in Gori, Georgia, back then part of the Russian Empire. Chapter 1. His Young Life. Stalin was raised in poverty as an only child. He often experienced beating from his alcoholic father and contracted smallpox as a child. As an emerging teenager, Stalin received a scholarship to attend a seminary in a nearby city known as Tbilisi, where he would study for the priesthood in the Georgian Orthodox Church. During his scholarship years at the Georgian Orthodox Church, he became fascinated with Karl Marx's work as a social philosopher in Germany. As a result of this, he was inspired in partaking in a Russian revolution against the Russian monarchy, for the hopes to create a better motherland. He was later expelled from the church school as he did not attend exams. However, he would later claim that the real reason was Marxist propaganda. Chapter 2. Children and Wives. In 1906, Stalin married Ekaterina Svanzinze and had a singular son. His first wife died from typhus in 1907 when their son was still an infant, and Yakov, his first son, would later pass away in Germany as a POW in World War II. Later in 1918, Stalin went on to marry his second wife.
Надежда Аллилуева.
In 1918, having two more children, his only daughter, Svetlana, in 1926, and his second son, Vasily, in 1921. Chapter 3. His Rise to Power. In 1903, after the Marxist revolutionaries split into two parts, Menshevik and Bolshevik competing wings, Stalin decided to stick with the second faction, the Bolshevik wing, which at the time was more militant, and under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin. Due to Stalin taking part in communist revolutionaries, he was arrested 7 times for revolutionary activity against the monarchy, along with multiple imprisonments and exiles in the early years of the 20th century. In 1912, Vladimir Lenin, exiled to Switzerland at the time, assigned Stalin to serve on the first Central Committee of the Bolshevik Party. A whole 3 years later, in 1917, the Bolshevik Party seized power over the Russian Empire in the Russian Revolution and made Vladimir Lenin their first leader in the newly founded USSR, or United Soviet Socialist Republics, in late December 1922. Just over a year later, in January 1924, Lenin dies of a brain hemorrhage at the age of 54, leaving no direct heir to the leadership of the USSR. Because of this, lots of political figures including Leon Trotsky, Lev Kamenev, Nikolai Bukharin, and Alexei Rykov all wanted to be Lenin's successor. However, Trotsky was exiled in 1928 to remote parts of the Soviet Union and later to countries such as Turkey, France, and finally Mexico City, whereby he was assassinated in 1940. Whilst Kamenev, Bukharin, and Rykov tried their best to be the next Soviet leader, Stalin quickly overpowered them, winning the power struggle and becoming the dictator of the Soviet Union in 1929. He would later, in the Great Purge, accuse his former political rivals of treason, counter-revolutionary activities, and espionage, executing all of them in March 1938. Chapter 4. The USSR under Stalin's rule. Now that Stalin had officially become dictator of the Soviet Union, he decided to launch a series of 5-year-long plans intending to upgrade the Soviet Union from a peasant-ridden society to an industrial superpower. His plans focused on government control of the economy, including government seizure of farms and agriculture. His ways and plans were not always collaborated on. Because of this, millions of farmers that refused to collaborate with him were executed or exiled. These actions led to famines that would later plague the Soviet Union for decades to come, leaving tens of millions to starve. Halfway through the 1930s, Stalin started a series of campaigns known as the Great Purge. These campaigns were designed to eliminate and exile all threats in the Communist Party, Red Army, and rest of Soviet society, in order to ensure his totalitarian rule and to prevent any uprising against him. Stalin's choice of rule was terror, using his power to eliminate possible threats to his rule and society. He used this to control his people with propaganda, throw many into gulags and forced labor camps, for the benefit of the USSR. His name and role in the Soviet Union were used to create a sort of hero or saint figure for his people. With the use of literature, music, cities, he wove himself into the nation, rewriting history along the way, whilst also using censorship and propaganda to prop up his image and make him everywhere. Chapter 5. His Role in World War II. On August 23, 1939, mere days before Nazi Germany invaded Poland, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany signed a non-aggression pact, known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Stalin began annexing Poland, parts of Romania, and the Baltic states, including Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, as well as invading Finland in late November 1939. Throughout the early years of World War II, Stalin was repeatedly warned by British and American forces, along with his own spies and intelligence agencies, about a possible invasion by Germany. However, he ignored these, resulting in an unprepared army when Operation Barbarossa went into effect in 1941. Operation Barbarossa was at first very successful, eventually reaching Moscow in that very winter after obliterating millions of unprepared Red Army troops. Stalin employed strategies such as a scorched earth defensive policy, whereby he would destroy all supplies and infrastructure deemed beneficial to Nazi forces. He remained in Moscow throughout this chaos and had the tides of battle slowly change with his victory at Stalingrad from August 1942 to February 1943, which would later lead to Germany to be pushed out of the USSR. To defeat the Axis powers, the Big Three, Stalin, Churchill, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, came together at the Tehran and Yalta conferences during World War II to plan the division of Germany along with the post-war world. Stalin kept loyal to his allies throughout the war until Japan's incident with the Little Boy and Fat Man, atomic bombs developed by the United States that fell on Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This enraged Stalin, leaving him speculation on his trust and cooperation with the Allied forces, as he had plans to invade Japan, and they were crippled by American actions. America would later go on to state that this was done to save Japan from communism and to give the USA more allies in capitalist states. Chapter 6. The Cold War. After the American actions on Japanese soil, Stalin began to separate himself from the Allies and build his empire. The fellow communist nation China was quick to collaborate with Stalin, and together they helped fund and support Communist North Korea's invasion of South Korea in 1950. This would be the first large-scale event for the Soviet Union since the surrender of Japan, and would fuel the Cold War for many decades to come, creating even greater tensions between the two superpowers. Chapter 7. Stalin's Death. In Stalin's final years, he became incredibly paranoid, and in 1953 ordered the arrest of multiple Kremlin doctors, under the belief that they were medically murdering various Soviet leaders. This was Stalin's preparation for another great purge. This time, it would be known as the Doctor's Plot. However, before this could go into effect, Stalin had arranged a meeting, consisting of his inner circle including Lavrentiy Beria, Nikita Khrushchev, and Georgy Matlinkov, and a few more, whereby they would enjoy entertainment and drink together. Shortly after this, Stalin retired to his room at around 4 AM on March 1st, and wasn't contacted for the whole next day. It wasn't until about 11 PM that a housekeeper cautiously entered his room, discovering him laid down on the floor, heavily breathing and unconscious. 8 hours later, 7 AM, March 2nd, Lavrentiy Beria arrived on scene. The doctors concluded that he had suffered a hemorrhagic stroke involving the middle cerebral artery. Unfortunately for Stalin, there wasn't much they could do. With his condition rapidly deteriorating and his unresponsiveness, he was declared dead on March 5th of 1953 at 9:50 PM. He was later embalmed and preserved in Lenin's Mausoleum in Moscow's Red Square up until 1961, when Nikita Khrushchev gave the order for him to be removed and buried near Kremlin walls, as part of Nikita Khrushchev's de-Stalinization process. Since his death, there have been many conspiracies believing it was an assassination conducted by his inner circle. However, all the symptoms point towards a stroke, which followed the conditions Stalin had previously experienced in 1945. Chapter 8. Reflecting on his impact. Throughout Stalin's totalitarian rule, he established a rule of terror among his people, whilst also allowing the deaths of some 6 to 20 million people from execution, starvation, and disease.